What's going on? What is this, week 2 of college football? It feels like week 3 because that week 0 shit throws me off. But it's another week of college football, and I am ready for it. And you know what? I have a friend called Bill who's a sweaty tryhard just like me, who is going to be helping me break down the slate and will be carrying on this show for the rest of the year. But for right now, who the hell am I? My name's James, better known as the Degenerate 75, and I'm here to break down this college football slate for tomorrow, Saturday. What is it going to be? September the 7th. So let's get ready. Let's break it down. The full slate, helping you get better at the game. I'm telling you, if you've never tried college football DFS, shame on you. You need to try it. Unless you live in one of those backward-ass states, which doesn't allow it, I'll never get it. Just drive to the border of the state next to you. Go reserve your lineups, and you can still play. That's the best way to do it, all right? Let's get going. Without further ado, let me bring in my main man right over here. His name's DollaBill. He's my friend. I call him Bill. How's it going, Bill?
Man, it's going good. Excited for another week of college football. Excited to actually have some real data after all the transfers and new coaching staffs and everything. We basically went in not completely blind, but it's nice to actually having seen some college football the last couple of weeks and know a little bit more what we're doing.
I went 2-1 in cash last week, right? I won 2 of the 3 slates, and that feels like a mega win whenever we're just basically guessing how week 1's going to go out. So off to a much better start. As more games get played, we know who the rotations are, what the game flow is, how the offense works. Projections get better, and you can have a more sustainable time at cash. At least that's my opinion on it. I'm just a cash whore when it comes to college football, which is funny because at PGA, NFL, I'm almost exclusively GPP, but it's just something about cash at football I absolutely love. Are you the same way, or are you more of a GPP guy?
Oh, yeah, I'm a big cash guy for college football specifically. And then NFL, I'll dabble in cash a little bit too, but college football, it's mainly cash for me.
Gotcha. All right, guys, here's my schedule for the rest of the fall. Assuming my health holds up, which is that's a big fucking if, Bob. All right, so Tuesday, me and Tambo are going to be doing a first look for NFL. Every Wednesday that there is a golf tournament, I will be doing the emergency stream, probably a condensed version, because it's just going to be me and the sweaty tryhard, so we only need to go over the important stuff, not a lot of teaching going on. And then every Friday, I'm doing this college football show, which I've done for the past 3 weeks, but I'm going to be passing it off to my dude, Bill. Let's get going. Start contest selection tomorrow. If you are one of those filthy animals that likes to play in GPPs tomorrow, there are the options are good. They're plentiful. Let me rephrase it. They're plentiful. There's a lot. You can tell DraftKings is really trying to improve college football GPPs. You know, the big one's $100,000 up top, the big $20. But you know, if you know me, you know what I'm going to say. It's fucking unplayable. A third to first, get the fuck out of here. Second place is only 1/4 of first. Get the fuck out of here. And 10th place is 1/100th. I mean, you could have a lineup that absolutely smashes balls. You could have the lineup of the year, and you could get like 8th place out of 17,000, and you're getting $1,000 back. I mean, if you put 50 lineups in, you're breaking even, Bob, on your big breakthrough lineup of the year. I hate it. I'll tell you what, the best way to go if you want to play GPPs tomorrow is keep it small, man. The $4.20 max is always so much more playable with a better structure. The $6 red shirt, much better. The $150 3 max is even playable. The $1.20 max. There's a lot of decent contests, but just nothing with huge prizes. All the ones with huge prizes, the flea flicker, the Saturday kickoff, the game changers, they're either too expensive to get into or they're just terrible. So, Bill, what's the one contest they should definitely play in? I'll give you a clue. It's rate free.
It's the best structure contest on DraftKings today. It's the SHIPIT Nation Listener League contest. We need to fill it up. We filled it up pretty easily the last few weeks, so you might have to get. Well,
you say pretty easy. I've had to beg on Twitter. Hey, motherfuckers, it's an hour till lock. Help me out. We just got to get in the habit of doing this. It's a $5 5 max, no rake. It is the largest rake-free college football contest out there. So if you want to do a little test with yourself and ask yourself this question, am I a fucking moron? Well, here it is. Are you playing in GPPs and not playing in this one? Then yes, you're a fucking moron because this is the best value one out there. It is absolutely rake-free. It has a balanced payout structure. Get in there. I'd like to continue to grow it, but I'm not going to ask them to grow it until we get it filled more than 30 minutes before lock. It's a $5 5 max. If $25 is too much to max it out, toss one in there. It'll still be good. It'll still be fun. Get in there. Quick shout out to last week's winner, B Shaw 690, flying the wrong flag, but congratulations nevertheless. See my boy Bill Bilkey and Droid, MK Kerwin up there. So a lot of the homies doing well. Get in there. You can see I got one in the money. I'm just a cash guy. What do you want me to say? All right, GPPs. I'm like, ooh, I can't do that. All right, let's get to this. This is the Stone right here. New guy over at SHIPIT Nation, where me and Bill are at. We have this thing called the Stone, where everybody just gives you projections and ownership. Of course, we give you projections and ownership, but we want to break it down game by game, player by player, and take a lot of the intimidation out of college football DFS. Is this guy a GPP play? Is he a cash play? Is he an injury risk? Is this a good game to play? Is this a game I should avoid? We put it all on the Stone. If you want to see what the fancy one looks like, right here is what the real one looks like, but you get the watered down version on YouTube because you're poor and you're just watching the okay. So we're going to break down all these games, give you some guys to look out for, some games to avoid, and stuff like that. We're also going to, kind of teach you the general overview. My main man, Bill, before we dive into the games, do you have any overarching thoughts about the slate in general? Any strategy or any thoughts about it?
Yeah, something that's a little bit different this week than kind of what we've seen the few slates last week is that I would say more than half the quarterbacks you could argue for cash this week. Usually that's not the case. There's whether it's mispricing this week or the matchup or the team total, you could argue more than half the quarterbacks are cash viable. And we were talking last night. Our boy Akasaw was saying he loves these kind of slates for GPPs because there's so many different routes you can take and still have the nuts lineup.
Right.
With all of these guys with these high projections and comfortable pricing. You can get way different and still have a ceiling lineup.
Absolutely. And I think this is just my theory. I saw that Quinn Ewers is the most expensive quarterback. And which, by the way, laughable. You please play Quinn Ewers. Please. If you please play Quinn Ewers. Anyways, I'm just telling you, he'll go for 225 and 2 touchdowns there. I can already foresee the future. I'm a fucking shaman. But anyways, which at $9,000 ain't going to cut the mustard, Bob. But here's what I would say. I think because Quinn Ewers he's $9,000 this week. I think all the other quarterbacks are just getting a discount simply because they don't have the name and brand recognition of Quinn Ewers in Texas. So everybody else is being kind of priced down, and you're getting really good values on these quarterbacks who are projected higher, probably because they're in better scoring environments than that Texas-Michigan game. And so I think that there's a million better plays. And yes, I will be open. I think Quinn Ewers is the Rory McIlroy of college football. But at the same time, this really is a week. He is just doesn't make a lot of sense to play because he is so expensive in a game that I assume is not going to be very high scoring. Did you have any more thoughts, Bill? Or you want to get down to breaking down these games?
No, overall, that's about it. We'll talk a little bit more about Quinn Ewers later. Not too much because I think we've already talked too much about him.
Amen. One sentence is too much. Boomer sooner, mother fathers. All right, Texas is actually pretty good. I hate to say it. They refilled those wide receivers quickly. All right, here we go. We're going to get going. Kansas State versus Tulane. Bill, I'm going to let you kind of dictate any plays you like and guys that we should look out for, anything like that. So let's just start with K-State. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so anybody who knows you knows you're a sweaty tryhard when it comes to weather, and this is a weather game we want to watch. It's looking a little bit gnarly in New Orleans, so that always makes me like the run games a lot more. And not to mention DJ Giddens, one of the best running backs in college football last year, is priced at 6,600 for God knows why.
And he was splitting carries a lot last year. I can't remember the guy he was always splitting with, but
it was Trayshawn Ward.
There you go, Ward. Yeah. They were almost a straight 50-50 split, and now he's probably going to have at worst 70% of that backfield, right?
Yep. Well, and Avery Johnson is basically RB2 now. So he's good on his feet. He can throw the ball. He's basically the reason Will Howard transferred to Ohio State is because Howard saw the writing on the wall that Johnson was going to be the guy. So those are two studs in this matchup that you're looking at. Jace Brown, I'd like him more if the weather was going to be better, but we'll just kind of have to see how that plays out. Always look for updates last minute because weather changes.
And I don't worry too much about weather, obviously, with the running game, right? So I think Johnson and Giddens aren't really going to be affected that much. Mm-hmm. Tulane has they're only a 9-point dog, and Tulane's been a very good program over the last few years. Is there anybody over here we're considering?
The first guy that jumps out to me is Mekhi Hughes. He's a name that should be familiar to anybody who plays college DFS. He had a few blow-up games last year. He's pretty consistent. It's yet to be determined how great this Kansas State defense is. They should be good. They should be better. They, good enough to handle Tulane. So that's my one concern there. And the game script, you got a big underdog with the running back, but he really is their offense. Mario Williams is the wide receiver transfer from USC. So he's a name that you'll recognize. And he's
also used to play
player.
at OU. Also used to play at OU.
Yeah. And then just a funny story, Ty Thompson was the transfer from, I think, Ohio State and then Oregon, and then went to Tulane and got beat out anyway. So
maybe it's not the schools, bro. Maybe it's
very well could be. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really looking at a ton from Tulane in this one.
Mekhi Hughes probably not cash, right? Because I remember playing him in cash a lot last year, but not against that K-State defense with his team only having a 19-point total, right?
Yeah, you're taking a shot on either Hughes or Williams and hoping for that ceiling game.
Gotcha. Now, that's a pretty good game here. Arkansas, Oklahoma State, pretty big total, right? I think Arkansas actually has a functional offense this year. Taylor Green, I remember that guy can go for 40 points. I remember him last year at Boise State. Jaquindon Jackson, the transfer from Utah, is definitely getting more run at Arkansas than he was getting at Utah because Utah has to rotate 75 running backs. I believe it's in their actual school manual. And then, of course, you've got like fantasy god himself, Ollie Gordon, in this game with a big total. I mean, is this not a game you want to kind of like get some, like you're probably going to want to have a piece or two in?
Yeah, this is definitely a game we're looking at. I mean, there's some other high totals and close spreads on this slate, but this one has studs in it. I mean, Taylor Green's a dual threat, so his ceiling is so much higher because he has a running ability. And with a running back like Jaquindon Jackson in the backfield that can take some of that rushing load off of him. I mean, he's not Ashton Jeanty, but I mean, Jackson's a good running back. The wide receivers are fine. I mean, there's a couple names down there. One from OU, I think you'd recognize.
Yeah, Luke Hasz is their tight end. I know he's kind of a stud, but does he get enough volume to pay off that $3,300 price tag?
Yet to be determined in this new offense. How much are they actually going to throw the ball? And, they can spread it around. They have three guys there at the top in Tesla and Broden with Haas that could easily eat up some of the volume. That's one of the bigger question marks with Arkansas, with just 1 week of data and a pretty new offense with these new guys.
They priced Bowman up to 8,400. They're saying, you're not playing Bowman at a discount this week. But here's my real question. I think that needs to be centered around this with Oklahoma State. Have you messed around with lineups yet? Can you feasibly get $9,600 Ollie Gordon in a lineup and it not just be a trash lineup?
Yep. Yeah. You'll see later on in the slate, there's some misprices. That's, there's a way to get there. And Ollie Gordon's one of those guys. He's kind of like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels were for us last year. Just, it doesn't matter how expensive they are. You're going to put them in your cash lineup. And until Ollie Gordon is like 12K, I think he's cash viable. It's unreal. He could project upwards of, 25 to 30 points as a baseline week to week. So it's hard to avoid him here.
And then Presley and Owens are definitely the two usage monsters at receiver, right?
Yep. And Presley's a little bit priced up, and Dejon Stribling is a transfer from Washington State from a couple years ago, but he was hurt all last year. He had a pretty monster game last week. He had a lot of targets. I don't remember exactly how many catches, but like a solid fantasy outing. So at 4,800, he and Rashad Owens are both kind of those ceiling guys. Presley's just like the nookie blankie that Alan Bowman always finds, for 10 to 12 targets a game.
All right, let's get to probably the best game to watch tomorrow on the slate, but probably not the best game to be getting college football DFS money in on. Texas versus Michigan. I'm really excited about this game. I saw 7.5. So if that's the updated line at 7, it looks like some money's coming in on Michigan. Let's just get started. Remember, this is fantasy football, new guy, not those teams are good. Those teams are good, and they're going to play a lot of defense. I think that's a pretty reflective score there. 24-17 sounds about right to me. So, if you're paying $9,000 for Quinn Ewers, what's his upside in a 24-point team total? That's why I'm shitting on him. And he sucks. So what do you think here for Texas?
I really don't have a whole lot of thoughts on this game. The first thing I thought when I saw Quinn Ewers' price was Paulie Tellem.
Yeah.
And
get the fuck out of here.
Everybody's it's just too expensive for this game environment. Side note, I don't remember the last time Michigan was a 7-point dog at home. That's pretty insane to me. I know they're down this year, but their defense is still solid. It's just what are they going to do at quarterback? We can't play their quarterbacks, even though they're cheap at Michigan. Running backs, Donovan Edwards, way too expensive against Texas. Jaden Blue is even too expensive considering the other options on the slate and how good Michigan is. And you can't pull the trigger on any of these guys. They're priced up too high where it's going to make a difference. In cash. Yeah. Play anybody in GPP. Right. And, like Samaj Morgan is a guy. He could easily get the volume in this game. He's fast. He's quick. One of those quick twitch guys is what they call it. I don't know. But he can get a lot of volume, if they draw it up that way against Texas. But yeah, cash, you're avoiding this game almost completely.
Trey Wisner was used more by Texas last week than I was anticipating. And at $4,400, he might get the volume to justify that, especially if he falls into the box once or twice. Just something that kind of surprised me because I just remember OU recruiting him and I didn't think he'd be such an impact player so quickly.
Yeah. He's one of those guys, like you said, he's cheap enough that you're going to get leverage because like people are just going to avoid this game in general. They see the low total, they see the tough defenses, and they know that people are smart. They know it's not good for DFS. Most of the people playing these guys are just Texas and Michigan fans.
Yep.
But yeah, Wisner's one of those guys that you can sneak into your lineup, and it doesn't restrict you anywhere else.
All right, this one looks like a lovely environment. A 60-plus point total, a 2-point spread, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, two teams not notorious for playing great defense. And we've already seen this Holstein kid, and he doesn't suck. So we'll get us started with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh basically took the new clock rules and said, shove it up, NCAA. They ran 84 plays last week. They're gonna move this offense. That's why their team total is so high. And Cincinnati gave up 20 points to Towson. So we're not scared of that defense. So Holstein, 6,500. They barely priced him up. Desmond Reed's not priced up enough. You could play 4 of these receivers and feel comfortable with it. The top 3 for sure, Mumfield, Williams, and Johnson, all had monster games last week. It just so happened that Mumfield and Williams were the ones that found the end zone. It could easily be Johnson this week. And, Gavin Bartholomew, big tight end, I'm all on board on him.
This is 4K. One of those ones that, like, if you're playing GPPs, you probably just like rotate them, right? Like have Holstein, double stack him, and you can just mix and match those wide receivers with him, right?
Yeah, and I don't even mind a stack with Holstein and Reed with a wide receiver. You could argue playing 4 of these guys in a lineup and feeling okay.
If this game's 41-38, it's not going to shock us.
Exactly.
So going over to Cincinnati, who does the work for them?
So Swordsby is a lot more of a pocket passer than Emory Jones was last year. He's a kid who started at Indiana and was splitting time with Taven Davis. I don't know. But then Corey Kiner he's clearly the RB1. So he's going to get the usage in the backfield. But they're going to throw the ball a lot more. So I love Henderson.
Mm-hmm. He's definitely their alpha.
Yeah, and he's a guy from Florida that couldn't really get going last year because he had nobody to throw him the ball at Cincinnati.
He had a quarterback that can't throw a forward pass.
Mm-hmm. And Royer had a big game last year. Burkhalter's a guy that they've been talking a lot about. They talked a lot about him in the post game. They've involved him in more press conferences. So any 3 of those receivers, but Burkhalter and Royer are just cheap. Henderson is the usage hog. I think he had like 11 targets last week.
So this is a good game environment. We like this game a lot. All right, moving on. Wow, not a great game environment. Penn State versus Bowling Green. I mean, when you see a team with a 6.8 team total like Bowling Green has, let me just go ahead and teach you rule number 1 in DFS. Just stay the fuck away from them. Okay, but what happens if I find that one receiver who goes for 23 points because, he catches their 1 touchdown and gets 6 catches for 80 yards? Okay, well, I mean, like, that just doesn't happen that often on a 6.8 total, right? And even if it does, there's going to be another wide receiver out there for an actual offense that matches that at the same price. So, do you have anybody from Bowling Green, Bill? I'm going to go on a limb and say no.
No, and just to pile on that point a little bit more, Harold Fannin, 5,000, great tight end, but he is the same price as Pittsburgh's most expensive receiver, and he would be wide receiver 5 on Pittsburgh this week. So, I mean, you're not looking at Bowling Green at all. If they're lucky, they scored 17 points, and one of them is probably a fluke defensive touchdown.
Penn State is just a team I never play in my lineups. They just, the 2 running backs are good, but they always split. The quarterbacks just never do enough, and they spread the ball around to the receivers too much. Although I did notice my boy Wallace III with a monster week last week, but that's just not something I want to bank on with consistency of Penn State wide receivers going for 30 points. I do want to ask you this: Singleton and Allen. Is Singleton finally started to lead that backfield now?
He was the clear RB1 last week with Allen spelling him. It's not as much like last week. It wasn't as much of a 50-50 split. So we are going to see more Singleton, and he came around in the second half. I think, it was like a 3-2 Singleton to Allen ratio. Allen just had the receiving touchdown, which boosted his numbers a little bit more. But it's probably more of a 70-30 than a 50-50.
Did Julian Fleming do shit last week, the Ohio State transfer? I didn't even see.
No, I'm pretty sure I think I had him in my lineup, and I was not thrilled.
He's one of those dudes. He looks like a freaking brand new fancy Tesla, but he's really just like a little Chevette from the 80s.
Yeah, I don't even know if he got a target.
So is there anybody from Penn State that might weasel their way into your lineups?
Wallace would be the guy. And I could see playing either of these running backs in GPPs. Drew Aller's too expensive.
At least they're priced and Singleton and Allen apart a little bit.
Yeah, they're so like Allen is cheap and he's still going to get plenty of usage. Singleton, Yeah, those would be the three guys.
Let's not spend any more time on
No.
Penn State. Let's get to a good game environment.
Yeah.
This Georgia Tech Syracuse game has shootout city written all over it. Like, this could be the one that, like, you could have 6 guys from this game in your GPP lineup and you could get there, because I was pretty impressed with Georgia Tech versus Florida State. Look, I know Florida State sucks balls this year, but like, they still got some dudes on defense. And when they played back in week 0, Florida State didn't know they sucked balls then. Okay. So Georgia Tech, 32-point team total, only a 2.5-point line, and you've got Syracuse running it back, who basically runs their offense through 2 guys. This is just a really warm environment to get into. Who are you feeling for Georgia Tech?
Haynes is still too cheap for the usage he gets. The receivers are still too cheap. The one thing, like, Haynes King could have a 40-point game. So he's a guy that you look at in GPP. He's a little bit expensive in cash for me, but one of those guys that's kind of teetering right on the line. So I don't mind him. If you love him for cash, I'm not going to argue with you. But the thing with the receivers is Rutherford has had the better season so far, but I still think Singleton might be the better wide receiver. So it's just a matter of getting those guys right. You could do a double wide receiver stack in this situation with a 32-point team total. Those 4 guys, that Haynes, Singleton, and Rutherford, are going to get fed. And then King's just the guy that's feeding it to him. And he's dual threat too, so he can do it on the ground.
Jamal Haynes, the running back, kind of a badass. Guy's kind of a badass.
Mm-hmm.
Going over to Syracuse, a 30-point team total at home, where I swear they have their biggest games in the freaking Carrier Dome. LeQuint Allen, Gadsden, are those our dudes still?
Yeah, they priced them up, but still not enough. Allen at $7K is a steal. He's not far behind Ollie Gordon point per dollar in my brain, just because Ollie's 9.6. Yep. So he's right there with them. And Gadsden was 10 targets last week. The guy that's a little bit sneaky to me is Pena. He wasn't far behind Gadsden last week. He had 7 targets, had a few catches. And he had a big explosion game. I think he had 3 touchdowns or something, but he also runs the ball. So he's a wide receiver who will get some carries as well. So Kyle
McCord seems like he could be interesting, but 8,400, that just seems a little steep for Kyle McCord.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Kyle McCord is that he could have 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, but at 8,400, you're kind of teetering that line of that
won't pay the bills at GPPs. No. That's only 22 points. That ain't going to pay off 8,400. That's not even 3x value.
So that's where I could see a Syracuse run back from Georgia Tech with Allen and Gadsden or Allen and Pena, and I'd be just fine with that.
Very stackable game. California, Auburn. Auburn 13-point favorites. What do we? I see a couple injury concerns over here with California at the wide receiver spot.
It's the wide receiver positions basically transfer city. There's 2 guys that aren't even on here right now because we don't think they're going to play. Tobias Merriweather from Notre Dame and Kyon Graves from Ohio State. They're both trending toward not playing, but then you got Jonathan Brady from New Mexico State, who was injured and might not play. You got Mikey Matthews, who I think is a Utah transfer, who might not play because he was dinged up last week. So this is when you just got to watch the news, and it's a later game, so we're probably not going to get it. I think it's a later game.
Which, by the way, if you're wanting to know about this injury news, you got to be over on the SHIPIT Discord or whatever community you're a part of. Of course, I'm going to tell you, if you're not a part of a community and you're trying to keep up with all this injury news for college football, you can't do it, Bob. You've got to be in a community. If you're looking for one, I encourage you to come check out SHIPIT. We are constantly putting out updates of anything that happens. Not only will we tell you, hey, Jonathan Brady is officially out tomorrow, and we'll do this throughout the afternoon because College Football DFS has late swap, so you can make these adjustments, but we'll tell you who benefits the most from these guys being out. We will hold your hand through this process, and we've got like 6 guys on our team that are constantly in there updating this stuff and helping you with anything you need. So this is like probably the most valuable part of college football. Not only do we have the Stone, the most inventive thing in the industry, we also have a great community, and there's a lot of great college football communities out there, but we offer that on top of everything that we also offer. Let's move over to, by the way, I didn't want to shit on Jay Knott or Mendoza. Are they worth playing with just a 20-point team total?
Ott always has the upside in cash, so why wouldn't you find the extra $500 for Ollie Gordon?
Yeah, amen to that. What about Auburn? I mean, that's a pretty big team total we got there.
Yeah, these are guys we're looking at. Peyton Thorne is too cheap for what he's shown he can do at Auburn. Jarquez Hunter is a solid running back. If you like, I wouldn't mind swapping him out for Haynes at Georgia Tech if you don't have the money and can't find it. He's not a terrible second option. Cam Coleman is one guy we're kind of looking at this week, though, because he's the number 2 recruit in the nation behind Jeremiah Smith. He has a quarterback that can throw to him. I don't know if you guys know Keandre Lambert-Smith, old Penn State wide receiver, but I think he's just terrible. I don't know if he can catch the ball. He disappears way too frequently. So Cam Coleman,
his friends call him Houdini.
Coleman could easily lead this wide receiver room this week. Like they're going to want to get him the ball. Kind of like we saw with Ohio State last week. They fed Jeremiah Smith. This could be the same situation at Auburn.
All right, South Carolina, Kentucky, pretty low total. I guess some scrubby teams that want to play some scrubby defense, which, by the way, is probably going to make for a good game to watch on television, but not a great game to get in for college football DFS. Anybody from either of these teams that you might be looking to get into your lineups?
For upside, it's Sanders and Sellers. Sanders had 24 carries last week. Sellers had 21 carries last week. So it's RB1 and RB2 more than it is quarterback, running back. Yep. Wide receivers, they don't interest me a ton, especially a road game where you're only projected for 17 points. But, with the rushing upside of Sellers and Sanders, I wouldn't talk you off of them.
Kentucky has a bigger team total and probably has better, more defined weapons. Who are you looking at there?
Vandegrift is super solid. He looked great last week. It was a weather-ridden, that was the one that got delayed, and it was midnight in Kentucky, and they were still in the third quarter. I think they might have just ended up canceling it. I'd have to look back, but Brown and Key are the two guys. Barry and Brown is another guy that does a lot of different things. And he was solid last year. Dane Key was solid last year. Jamoy Macklin's the new guy in the wide receiver room. Wouldn't mind him. He's just a little bit more expensive than Key. And then the NC State transferred Demi Sumo Karngbaye. Yeah.
Nice. Nailed it.
He's priced up a little bit. But he was clearly the running back one last week. So, in a game environment, Kentucky likes to run the ball. They had Chris Rodriguez and Ray Davis. So if they can get Demi into that role even slightly, he could see, 17 to 20 carries.
Just call him old sumo wrestler the rest of the year. It'll be way easier on you.
That is way easier. I got to come up with more nicknames.
Another gross game. Iowa State, Iowa. I mean, look at these team totals. Just crazy. I'd probably still take the under on 35 on this game. Where are we at here?
There's one guy in this game I'm really looking at.
Who's that? I can't wait to hear this.
Big tight end, Luke Leachy.
Oh, there you go. We have a problem with tight ends over at SHIPIT Nation. We love big tight ends, but
he's a target monster. Iowa loves throwing to their tight ends. He's 3,800. You can make an argument for Moulton. He had a solid game last week, and if they can get him more as a workhorse running back, he could get there. But Leachy's really the guy.
Would you say Moulton gets hot sometimes?
Yeah. Hey, look at that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then Iowa State, just don't play him this week. Play him later this year. They'll be cheap next week again.
All right, let's keep moving on, man. We still got a lot of games. We got to pick up the pace, Bob. Baylor, Utah. Let's see here. Decent total. Where are we at here?
Yeah, I mean, luckily these last few games, there's really only one more that we're going to talk a lot about. Baylor Salt Lake City's too tough. Baldwin's a great wide receiver and he's cheap. You can make an argument for him. Finn, if he has a ceiling game, he's a dude from Toledo. He's dual threat.
Is Baylor just straight up running back by committee with all those running backs? Because they look very affordable.
Yeah, it's Reese and Pendergrass are the two guys, but Dominic Richardson could be back, the old OK State guy. So if it's a three-headed running back room, I'm less interested. If it's two, again, you can make an argument, but the matchup is what scares me the most here. 20 points isn't nothing, but it would be a one-off, one of these cheap guys, whether it's a receiver or running back.
What about Utah?
I don't like Kyle Whittingham. It's hard for me to play Utah anytime because you never know. Dijon Mustard played the entire game last week in a blowout. He started the game as running back one ahead of Micah Bernard and Jalen Glover, and then played the entire game, had 3 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's like a receiving back too. So I like the 4,800 price on him. Cam Rising's just too expensive for this slate. Brant Keithy's priced up. Dorian Singer's priced up. They're priced right in the spot where I'm like, I don't think I can pull the trigger with all the value on this slate. Stanley would be the biggest guy I'm looking at from this game.
Yeah, I mean, once again, in GPPs, I think that maybe one of the wide receivers, one of the running backs from Utah is on the board, but man, not a team I'm looking to stack. They're just too priced up.
Yeah. GPP
and
for sure.
We don't trust Utah's system. They're kind of flaky when it comes to their rotations.
Yeah, because they love tight ends, but
disgusting game. Northern Illinois. Let me go ahead and help you. Just don't play them. All right. You want to know when to play Northern Illinois, guys? When October and November rolls around and we have action. That's when you play Northern Illinois, guys. In the meantime, you just sit your ass down. What about Notre Dame?
I like to call Northern Illinois a Tuesday team.
Yep.
Notre Dame, it's just a matter of how long these guys stay in. Jeremiah Love has kind of solidified himself as the top running back in that room. Riley Leonard, he's expensive, but he's dual threat. He could get you 40 points easy, especially in a game environment like this. And he seemed to favor Bo Collins, the Clemson transfer last week. So Bo Collins is somebody that's on our radar. Jordan Faison is hurt, so Chris Mitchell, the FIU transfer, is going to be starting. So he's another guy you could look at. And Mitchell Evans was on a pitch count last week. But as he gets more usage, I don't know that this is the week to do it against a MAC team. But he's a guy you'll probably want to keep on your radar for future.
Seems like they really priced up wide receivers this week. I'm seeing a lot of wide receivers at or above $6,000, which is kind of a pretty big threshold price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not going to matter when we get to the next game, though.
All right, there we go. We have got Michigan State, Maryland. I imagine Maryland's going to have a lot of value. Let's start with Michigan State. Anything there? God, they suck.
God, I didn't. They showed me nothing last week. They look terrible against FAU.
They're basically a MAC. They're basically a MAC.
They might as well be. Foster is the target guy. I don't mind him. He's just a little bit too expensive. If you're looking for ceiling, I think people might gravitate to Lynch Adams because he had a couple of big plays and a couple of touchdowns last week. Nate Carter's still the top running back, and until I see it from Childs, I'm not going to touch him.
Yeah, 17-point team total at Maryland. I'm out. But Maryland at home, 27-point team total, and it looks like their guys are just really priced affordably. Who do we like from Maryland?
All of them. Not the running backs, though. Just kidding. I
never play Himby over 6,000. No. That's just a good rule.
Nope. If you're looking at a running back, you'd want to play Ray or McDonald for the upside, especially in a game where Maryland could potentially blow them out. I think this team total is a little bit low. Maryland ran 84 plays last week as well. But Billy Edwards, dual threat quarterback, super high ceiling, only 6,500, very solid for cash. He's going to be chalky, but if you stack him correctly in a GPP, it could go very well. And then Felton and Prather. Felton had the big game last week. Tons of like 9 targets, 2 touchdowns, maybe 3. I'd have to look back, but Prather had 1 fewer target than Felton. So if Prather had gotten the touchdowns, we'd all be talking about how great of a game he had, and the ownership would gravitate towards him. So I think Felton's going to be chalky. Prather's the obvious pivot. And then any of these guys, Smith saw enough time on the field that you could warrant him in a stack. Preston Howard, we're going to have to see. He missed last week, is a little bit dinged up, but yeah, it's really Billy Edwards, Felton, and Prather that I'm looking at in this game.
All right, there you go. If you've been wondering, that thing on the screen, that's called the Stone. Look how fancy and pretty it is. The one we actually give out to our members over at SHIPIT Nation. We break down everything, all the injuries, cash, upside. Are they GPP? What's the best games to get into? And we're going to have all their stats. As they start to get stats, you'll start to see what their usage rate is, how many targets they're getting per game. It only gets better every week as we get more and more data. If you're like, hey, man, I want to get that. That looks cool. We'll just come right over here to SHIPIT Nation. When you go to SHIPIT Nation, come right here and you click Join the Nation. Little button I just clicked there. You go right here to single sport, and notice we have a football package. Annual $250 for football. And you're like, well, how much is your college football? No. We don't do that shit around here. NFL and college all in $249. I know, yeah, we have an optimizer called the Shiptimizer where you can add that on for just another $50 a month. So from right now, the start of September, all the way through February, you can get everything you need for college football, everything you need for NFL football, and the optimizer you need for $300. That's going to give you a lot more money to put into your contest, like the one that you're going to go enter right here, the Touchdown Hoedown Listener League, our listener league with no rake that you're going to go get in right now. So come join the nation. You need to be in a good community if you're going to be successful at college football. You need to be in a place where we are breaking down the games every Saturday morning, 1 hour before lock. We do a thing called the Stage on the Discord where we answer all your questions, break down any last minute news. You got to be there for those. I'm telling you, we do it better. We do it different. You're going to want to come check it out. Check out all of our winners last week. Incredible week for the community. We already had a ton more last night at Thursday Night Football because at our community, we celebrate, our members and not our moderators. All right, guys, it has been real. Bill, thank you for being here. He will be handling this show for the rest of the year, so I hope you enjoyed him. Tune in every Friday. We will have this show out. And please, guys, remember rule number 1, college football DFS is awesome. Don't take it for granted. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the content. Enjoy the tilt. Enjoy the sweat, and enjoy the results no matter what they are. Just be thankful for you have it. Thank you for being here. Enjoy college football tomorrow. Let's kick some ass. Let's have some fun. Enjoy this outro, you mother fathers.